Welcome to Refirement Life, the podcast for anyone navigating life transitions or planning to make life transitions to ensure your next years are your best years. Listen in for insightful, generous, and sometimes humorous conversation. It's time to get fired up with Christine Zamuda and Muge Wood, your hosts for this latest episode of Refirement Life.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to be talking about tapping into creativity to find your passion. I'm here with my partner, Muge Wood. And so, Muge, let's start off as we kick this episode off. Let's think about the week in review. Did you come away from our last podcast with any new insights or any new inspirations?
I actually did, Christine, and I thought a lot about inspiration and longevity and living your best life, especially in later stages of life. And I think I experienced one of those things when you have awareness and mindfulness towards something, you start seeing it everywhere. So one thing that jumped at me in a very delightful way is my husband and I went to Houston Symphony over the weekend to enjoy Mozart's Requiem, which is an amazing masterpiece. So that was a treat in and of itself. But what was equally good was the conductor was Itzhak Perlman, a very famous violinist conductor. And he is 77 years old. And he arrived at the stage in his electric scooter, got into the stage and started conducting this beautiful masterpiece for an hour and a half. He has a contract, apparently, with Houston Symphony to be a creative partner for 2 years. And after that ends, he's moving to other symphonies across the country to help them. And that was just amazingly inspiring. And the piece was standing ovation. And I looked at that and I found that truly inspiring and amazing. So that's one. The other one that caught my eye is a new record set by a 106-year-old woman with the name Apo Maria. She's a very famous Filipino tattoo artist, and she's also the oldest woman to grace the cover of Vogue magazine, where she is called out as an individual who symbolizes the strength and beauty of the Filipino spirit. And it's just remarkable. Very different examples, but it just goes to show what's possible. And there's really no limit to it. I found that very inspirational. And to be honest, I don't know that I would have thought about these nearly as much if we didn't have our conversation. So I'm really grateful for that. How about you? How was your week?
It was great. It was great. I actually did dig further into Rumi based on our conversation and had Amazon ship me a wonderful book, The Essential of Rumi. I thought I'd start with the basics and started reading a little bit about the poetry and just getting more of an idea of all that he speaks about. And there's a couple phrases in one of the poems that called to me, and I think it has some relevance for our audience. So essentially, it goes like this. The rose does not care if someone calls it a thorn or a jasmine. Ordinary eyes categorize human beings. Walk instead with the other vision given to you, your first eyes. So think about that, our first eyes, and being really wide open to possibilities, not thinking about the past, the things you might have learned that might deter you from doing something new. I thought it was really quite interesting and relevant for what we're going to talk about today. And then the second thing that inspired me was a visit from a friend, a longtime friend, and he's actually in the midst of a transition. He's changing roles, and he's doing something that I thought was pretty unique. He made a list of 45 people that he's having conversations with, and it's basically a professional walkabout where he is asking these individuals, tell me more about your superpowers. When did you discover it was a superpower? When were you comfortable enough to talk about it as a superpower? And also just, sort of delving into, well, what's next for some of the people that he respects in the business world. And, we spent 3 hours together. It went by so quickly, lots of back and forth, and I'm going to connect him to some people in my network. He was very generous even before he left my home that day. He made some connections for me, one of which is an author of this book called The Non-Obvious Guide to Being More Creative No Matter Where You Work. And Muge, as you know, I've got a real passion for creativity in the workplace, and how a great foundation of creativity drives not only a healthy environment to work in, but also helps a team get to bigger impact with innovation. So I'm going to be connecting with her. And one of the quotes in the book that I thought we can also talk about is this one. She says, creativity is breaking through the inertia of no by seeking possibilities. So without judgment. And that's, I think, super, super, super important.
That's amazing. First of all, thank you for sharing, and I am so glad you took a chance on Rumi and and got the foundations of Rumi. I am not very good about remembering jokes. I'm not a very good joke teller. I forget. But Rumi stays with me. And to add on to what you're saying, Christine, one statement from him that is a lot of times at the forefront of my mind. He says, "You are born to fly. Why crawl through life?" And I think that is just so powerful. He's not saying you are born to fly at the age of 10, 20, 40. You are born to fly throughout your life. And life is full of possibilities. Look for them, and we are all meant to fly in our own way. So I find that very inspirational. And the other story you shared about your friend that made me think is we seek, I think, growth within ourselves, as we should a lot of times. But then I think some of the growth and reflection could possibly come from our connections with our friends, with our community, that could be equally inspiring. It's, I think, like you said, it's a matter of losing judgment a bit, losing the fear of failure a little bit, and opening our minds. And then you combine that with, I think, a little bit of the serendipity of life. It's just amazing things can happen. So that is really inspiring. So thank you for sharing. So given that, I
think one other thing too, if I may, I think
Sure.
The other thing that sometimes it's hard for people to do is actually to be a little bit vulnerable. Right. Sometimes you need that 20 seconds of courage to ask someone, like, give me truly your opinion, your unplugged, unfiltered perspective. Because when you have that type of information and when you have that type of feedback, that's when it is a true gift, when you can actually act on it. But you have to be ready to both listen, accept, not be defensive, and really take that in to be able to explore everything that's possible.
Right. That's very true. It is scary. I think it's scary at times to ask for feedback because you may not like what you hear. It may put you on the defensive, but if you just keep a neutral point and take it as it comes, it can really broaden the perspective. And I think also complementary to that, surrounding ourselves with people who encourage us to be vulnerable, to try new things, as long as it is safe. And we are not putting ourselves and others around us in danger, go for it. And this notion of what is the worst that can happen, right? It's always better in general, looking back especially, try something than not to try it and grow from that experience. It's hard to do. But we are going to dive deeper into, I think, how to be inspired to do that. And here is the other thing. I feel like as I get older, I worry a little bit less about what others think.
Yes, there's a lot of freedom with age and experience.
Still be a nice, conscientious, kind person, but a little less worry about what others think, and that I think opens the door for new possibilities.
Totally. And when we talk about using creativity in the workplace or creativity as applied to your life plan, some of the biggest mistakes people make is they move too quickly from envisioning to solving for the problem, finding solutions. And I've been guilty of this too, especially if you have experience like, oh, I've done this before. This is exactly how we do it. Let me just tell you or show you, rather than stepping back and saying, well, what could this be instead? And what could this be with maybe the collective experience of the group? So seeking possibilities looks like, these kind of things: envisioning, imagining, exploring, generating ideas. Can you think of a time where you might have used some of those verbs to get to a bigger outcome?
I think there's a lot to think about there. You and I have been in these sessions from a business standpoint where we are looking to transform a particular process, let's say, and people get in a room and we say, okay, here are your sticky notes without any judgment. Right here, what you think would be possible. Don't worry about, is it possible? Is there budget? Is there time? Will people be on board with it? But just write down what's possible. And then so many creative ideas could be flowing, especially when you put it out there without time constraints, and also hear from others. In my own life, when I look back, I think I got the most creativity when I think about the road ahead of me and what it presents versus thinking too deeply about the consequences if I go that path. So as an example, I came to the US from Turkey to study, at the age of, 22 for my MBA. And it was a big step. That's an age of no cellular phones, computers, none of that. Wow. So I came in, not knowing anybody, 2 suitcases, etc. But I was super excited because I did not think of 5 steps ahead. I was just glad to be here. Anytime I experience this type of transition, whether it's a job, whether it's to go to a place, just being so excited about it, and just trying it to the point where you are not thinking, okay, where does it take me 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And also coming to the realization that the path we take can always change also. So it doesn't have to be the only path. And I think that's just trying and dipping your toe in the water, so to speak, and see what it does to your soul, what kind of joy it may create. And even if it is a colossal failure, at least you tried.
Yeah, you learn from it. I love the phrase, and I've used this a lot in life to friends, family. Sometimes you just have to leap and the net will appear. Right? There's a good visual, but I mean, you did exactly that, coming here with 2 suitcases and figuring it out, but you had the attitude and the grit to say, hey, like this could be really amazing. And approaching that situation with that attitude probably had you sailing through I would imagine, some challenging times.
Yeah, exactly. When you're so excited. And I think it's just interesting how this manifests itself in big and smaller things in life. So I'll give another example. The next thing on my list of things to do is to learn how to play a musical instrument. So I'm debating, is it going to be piano? Is it going to be guitar? So as much as we talk about this, as much as we talk about the fear of trying something new, I am still thinking to myself as we speak, okay, how is this going to work? Like, am I going to walk into this music center in my neighborhood, and am I going to be there with, a bunch of younger people? And here I am attempting to learn a musical instrument. How would that be? Need to overcome that and take that very first step. So that's my next immediate personal conquest
Awesome.
ahead of me. Yep.
Well, I did take guitar lessons, and I think we mentioned this last time. I was able to play one song very slowly, leaving on a jet plane. I think it's one of the easiest songs you can play. I can't play it now because you're supposed to practice 15 minutes a day to keep everything, in your mind, knowing the chords and everything. And I played it for my husband, and as I was playing it, I was like, "Do you know what it is?" He's like, "No."
I have no idea what
like,
you're playing.
Come on, do you know what it is now? And I started to slowly sing, and he's like, "Okay, I got it." But it was not a shining moment. But again, I tried. It was fun, and there were all ages. So I don't think I was the oldest person in the class by far. So go for it.
Go for it. Yes. So maybe next time we get together, a couple episodes down the road, I may have a story to share there. But thank
Love
you.
it.
Thank you for the encouragement. We all need it at times.
That's right. That's right. So the other work example that we're both familiar with, which I think is a great way that a company can explore the possibilities, is what Microsoft calls a hackathon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a hackathon project, for those who are not as familiar, is basically anyone in the company could have an idea that they want to explore, and they post it on a board, an electronic, I guess, sign up board. And anyone, regardless of where you sit in the organization, can sign up for that project and start to brainstorm what that might look like. And not only does that bring interesting perspectives, but people get to vote with their feet on the things they're passionate about, things they care about. And we've seen a lot of amazing things come out of hackathon projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of the, when we look at the successful growth hack ideas, whether professionally or personally, I think they sometimes come from our personal experience where we see a need or we are passionate about it. So, we are in the month of April, Earth Day is coming around. So I'm already starting to see eco challenges that are being put out there. What are the ways by which we can be more sustainable in our personal lives, in the way that we do anything, essentially small things add up to big things. So the idea of hackathons, I think, is very appealing because it is a shorter time duration. It's not a huge commitment, but it allows you to try with people who may feel similar passion as you to give it a go. I think it is really powerful. The hackathons, I think, Christine, you and I have been familiar with, is 3 to 5 days, but they are powerful prototype opportunities for innovation. And if it turns out to be good and it has a promise, then you spend more time on it. If not, you move on to the next idea.
That's right. That's right. And learn from it, right? There's beauty in the failures, because you can apply those lessons to other things to either short circuit your path to success or just know, a different path to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And this other expression pops into my mind in our conversation, which is that if you are not failing enough, that means you haven't tried enough new things enough. Because we are all destined to succeed and fly per Rumi, but we're also destined to fail, learn, and get up and try new things in the process. So if we can continue to orient our mindset of falling down, maybe making some mistakes, maybe slight, failure, embarrassment, it's all good. It's all good.
Right. That's right. Well, and let's talk a little bit about the resisting the urge to finding solutions. So finding solutions looks like judging, analyzing, choosing a path, refining ideas, critiquing. So there is a time and place for that. But as we start to think about, how to approach this and how to get more out of your life, to zero in on those passions, you want to curtail that inner critic or outer critic sometimes,
Right.
saying out loud, hey, that's not going to work. Put it in its place until you have time to really let those ideas, germinate, become more than they were just when you first mentioned them. And there's a couple tips that this author, Kathyrn Hayden, had is, hey, if you're going to brainstorm some ideas, think big. There's a lot to be said for that messy first draft of brainstorming ideas that are even ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then you step back, look at the ideas and see which ones can actually build on each other. Can some of those ideas be combined to make an even bigger impact, or maybe move a market, or be an interesting way to tackle a common everyday problem. And then, lastly, thinking again without judgment, waiting for the right time to really refine those ideas and analyze and say, what are the top 3 out of this session.
Right. I think just allowing enough time for all of this to unfold is so key. And part of that probably goes always back to listening, listening to ourselves, listening to ideas around us, and allowing enough time for reflection. I think many of us, I know I am, is problem solving oriented. So we want to have conclusions. We want to have a logical roadmap of how we get point A to point B. We want to have contingency plans. So we like plans. We like some amount of certainty to guide us. So when we kind of leap a little bit into the unknown, it can get uncomfortable, but I think allowing time to let it unfold, Christine, to your point, can be really powerful. The other thing I'll bring up here is what is it that really is the intersection of our passion, our joy, and something we're interested in, we may even be good at. How do we know we found that? And one thing that resonates with me is this concept of flow state. Mm-hmm. Which is coined some time ago by a philosopher, and it's referenced often in sports and other endeavors, where you are in a state of being so engrossed in what you're doing, you lose track of time. You may not even know what's going on around you. You look up and already a couple hours passed. And being able to find yourself in that state, doing an activity, maybe it's your passion of a musical instrument, maybe it's an arts project, maybe it is spending time with your family, whatever it is. I think when you find yourself in that state, that is the kind of activity to be cultivated that may turn into something big for you in your life. And I think, looking back also to our backgrounds, and, even as early as childhood, like, what was it that brought us passion? What was it that brought us joy? Is there something we wanted to do but we couldn't? Maybe we didn't have time, we didn't have money, it wasn't the right priority. So just thinking through all of that and coming up with what is possible for us without judgment can really unlock new possibilities. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think back at different things, and you mentioned even in childhood, I used to love to just comb the beach for seashells for hours and hours, and just looking for things that I maybe couldn't find at home, obviously, or something that was unique. And as I sort of became an adult and was in the business world, I was always interested in exploring new possibilities. I always liked going to the startup assignments and again, looking for things that haven't been done. And now in my art practice, again, I just love to experiment and can get lost in that for hours. I actually have to set an alarm, even if I'm going to be in there for 4 or 5 hours, because I know I will just get so absorbed and not realize how much time has passed. So I think you raise a really interesting thing and topic for our listeners to think about is, when is the last time you really lost yourself in something?
Right.
And not realized how much time had passed. That's a good clue that there's a passion project there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and don't give up on it. If that is not the right thing, maybe something else will come along. And I think in our hearts, we know when something really brings us joy, and just making the time and space to cultivate it without judgment. And I think a lot about that. Where is the judgment coming from? Like, why are we doing this? And I think part of it is just our nature of being against adversity, protecting ourselves from failure. It's to a certain extent maybe the instinct of self-preservation, and being intentional about putting that aside, giving something new a go. Is scary, but also, like your art example, hugely exhilarating. And just a spurt of growth to the mental state, which then pays dividends for our physical well-being.
That's right. That's right. And I think what you said is important. I think that's definitely one side and an important side to it. The other thing I think we all have to think about is being accountable.
Right.
I'll be honest. I kind of cringe when people say, "Oh gosh, you've done this. I wish I had the time to do this." We all have the same 24 hours in a day, and it just takes a commitment to do things. Maybe you're doing something an hour on a Wednesday or 2 hours on a weekend. It doesn't have to be a whole life change. And I understand the balance and the challenge of raising a family and working outside the home, working inside the home. It gets crazy.
Right.
But taking that first step and being accountable to yourself and not using excuses, that's the first I would say step towards achieving anything that you want to do differently.
That's very true, and I think it's also prioritization and self-accountability. These days, there's a lot of talk of self-care, and while that may include, all the good habits that feed our bodies, yoga, meditation, 10,000 steps a day, nutrition, diet, all that. But I think an important part of self-care is also making time to explore our passions, hobbies, and it is hard. It is hard to find the time, and some stages of our life we may have more time. Right? Empty nesters like me, I have more time than I did before. Having said that, there is always time if we can prioritize. And one thing that I know personally, I'll critique myself, that I can make even more time for myself is, get off scrolling the social media.
Yes.
On my phone, right? That can take a lot of time.
It can. It's amazing how much time
it's
that
amazing.
Can take.
Yes.
Yes. Very good point. Very good point. Well, if we're going to give some folks some advice on, passions and hobbies, there's a couple things to think about. And you mentioned social media. One other thing to think about is, what kind of information sources, websites do you gravitate towards when you want to relax? And right now, I think most people are doing social media, TikTok, Instagram. I'm a big podcast fan. I just find that there's so much information, and it's easy to just, either engage or quickly disengage depending on what people are talking about. And I find that that's just it's a way that you can get information while being active. You could be walking the dog. You could be, well, this isn't an example of being active, but unwinding instead of looking at the screen, listening to something and putting your phone on timer for 15 minutes. I'm just gonna, listen to this topic and see what I learn before I fall asleep.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. Simple things, right? And I think social media and digital platforms with intention and some time consideration is good. So, as an example, for me, I am always perusing travel sites. I'm like a permanent travel agent, 24 hours, just thinking about where I am going to go next. And I import all those ideas into my vacation vision board, which is just a note application. And it's probably fairly impossible for me to go to all those places in my lifetime. I'm always collecting ideas of restaurants, hotels, places to go. But it gives me such joy to know that there is a whole world of exploration out there, so much to see, so much to experience, so many different ways of lifestyles to connect with and to learn from. So it's just an example of really thinking back to, okay, what are you naturally drawn to, and you are truly excited about, and how can that be something that maybe you spend more time on and even share with others.
That's right. That's right. And then do you follow it up and read books on travel, or are you more of I'll grab a nugget here, consolidate it in my vision board?
Well, I organize them by geography, and I go back and reference, because let's say I'm going to go to New York City. I look at my vacation vision board. Okay, all right. So I took note of a couple of restaurants that I read about or heard about. So I draw from that, and it is really it's really helpful. So when I hear something, it's on my phone. So I immediately take note of it. So I've got tons of ideas ranging from Lake Tahoe to Thailand to Antarctica, and I look at that and reflect on, wow, that is a lot. That is a lot. Where to begin? But it becomes a source of inspiration.
That's
for
awesome.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Well, Thailand's on my list, so I need to see your Thailand chapter.
Yes, that's right. Well, I want you to go to Thailand and give me the scoop on what I'm putting in my note compares to the real life experience. Yes, that's right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so we talked about losing time when they're doing something and that flow state. I think a fun assignment, if our listeners are up for it and brave enough, I think to help really zero in on their strengths and their passions is to take the example of my friend who did the professional walkabout and ask a few questions of people who know you well. And those 3 questions are, what do you think my greatest passions are and why? What do you think my natural strengths and talents are? And have you thought I could have a second career in knowing, and a second career in something, knowing me, even if that second career seems improbable? I like that last question.
That's right. Again, going back to what is possible. And I think it's really interesting to ask these questions to different people in our lives, and see what their observations are. Just finding that intersection of what you are passionate about, and do you want to turn that into a second career or more, or leave it as a hobby? Up to you. Mm-hmm. But the point being, we tend to enjoy what we are naturally good at. So that's a really interesting reflection point we can create and draw some insights from. So I actually, Christine, now that you mentioned it, I'm going to do this myself, and then next time we can talk about it, what people observe in terms of how we show up in other people's lives, and where we are able to make an impact and have fun doing so. It seems like a good recipe for a purpose-driven life. And I think, as you're describing it, I'm thinking this is also not a one-time experience.
Mm-hmm.
And a one-time
Very
exercise, because a lot of transitions happen in our lives. It could be job related, health related, family related, many reasons. And our priority is and how we want to live our lives may change. Which is a good thing. It's good not to be in a fixed mindset. So I think maybe even asking these questions time to time as a check-in to see how things are changing, how we may want to adapt to different things unfolding in our lives could be maybe a bit of a continuous thing to consider doing.
I agree. And I like that you're taking the challenge. So now you're inspiring me to take the challenge too.
Yeah, we got to take the challenge because everything we're talking about here, we got to do it ourselves. So we are going to take the challenge. I want to see. I want to see what others are saying. We are going to take the challenge, Christine.
Perfect. And for those of you who are listening, we do have our podcast now on most of the major podcast channels. Apple, Spotify. We will be on Google Play by the end of today, I believe, and Amazon. We are already live on Amazon. So we'd love to hear from you and let us know if you're going to take the challenge, and we'd love to hear how that went for you. Maybe you'll even be on our next show.
That's exactly right. We are always interested in stories of finding your passion and how we are thriving in face of transitions and continue to live our best life in ways that we didn't even imagine was possible. So looking forward to it.
The last thing to leave the group with, and we can put this on the show notes. You mentioned Jay Shetty. And he has a framework for finding your passion, and basically 4 circles, at the top being love. What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what at the bottom could you be paid for? And the intersection of those 4 circles is ikigai.
Yeah, it's he's
Japanese
one of
word,
my,
right?
Yeah, that's right. It's a Japanese word. Ikigai is the intersection of those 4 circles. What you love to do, what you're good at, what the world may need, and what you could be paid for. If you're at that intersection of those things, that could be the place to be. And it doesn't take much, right? Just write the circles on a piece of paper and put your thoughts without judgment and see where it goes.
Love it. Leap and the net shall appear, but you got to put a little work in.
Yeah, I would say still get a net. Because you're making me think of skydiving, and I'm like, I don't know. I need to see the possibility of a net in the neighborhood.
Yes.
I do not need to deploy it right away, but I need to know a net is imminent. So yes, we are going to be taking a lot of leaps.
Yes, my visual is always the trapeze when I say that, but yeah. All right, my friend. As always, it's great spending time with you, and look forward to chatting next week.
That sounds great. Bye till the next time.
Take care now.
Thank you for listening. Our hope is to spark a little joy, inspire, and educate our listeners in ways to live an even more meaningful life. If you have reactions to share from what you've heard, please visit our website, refirement.life, to leave a voice message. You may even be featured in a future episode. To keep in touch, subscribe to our podcast, Refirement Life, using the podcast player of your choice. Always remember, you are never too old to set a new goal or to dream a new dream. Thanks again for joining us on this episode. Until next time.